Hey, my name is Mahan, I'm the CMO of Nairon.
My name is Luca, I'm the CEO of Nairon.
Welcome to our AI model series where we cover some of the most popular AI models out there in the market right now. And in today's video, we'll be doing Llama by Meta. So Luca, you can take it from there.
All right, so all the models that we've discussed so far, like Claude, GPT, or Gemini, are all closed source models. So you give them an input, you give them a query, they go off into the cloud and they come back to you with the final answer. So the difference is that Meta's Llama models run on your computer because they're open weight, which means essentially that the models are downloaded onto your computer. You can fine tune exactly how much of the model you want to act a certain way, sort of like fine tuning, but not really. And then you can have it run on your computer, not costing you any API tokens or anything like that. But the models are significantly smaller. And so they're not as intelligent, they're not as fast, and they're not as capable as like the other closed source models. So they can't really compete on quality, but they can compete on safety and on cost. So let's look at the company as an overall. In terms of Llama, obviously built by Meta, but similarly to Google, they've been actually working on ML and AI for the past couple of years. They had a department called FAIR, started all the way back to 2013. And only in 2025 did they actually restructure their internal organization around this new lab called the Meta Superintelligence Lab. And it's actually led by the ex-CEO of Scale AI, one of the biggest data labelers, Alex Wang. And so he came in, he sort of restructured the organization, and they've been kind of quiet since then. And so there's a lot of anticipation of what they're going to be doing in the next couple of years, but it's really, really cool.
Okay, and let's have a look at how Llama's progressed over the last couple of years.
So even though they did have a decade of experience leading up to this AI race, they only really started releasing the models to the public in 2023. And they started off with the Llama 1. Which was only for researchers, but it was sort of leaked, and so others were able to use it. Fast forward just a couple of months later, they released Llama 2, and that's the official first open weight model, which was free for even commercial use as well. And so if you have a really small use case that you need run locally on your computer, it's actually a really good model to use. But it will struggle with a lot of the more complex workflows. Fast forward just a year after that, Llama 3 comes out, and it's probably the biggest model that kind of closes the gap to the frontier. There's a lot of reasoning capabilities and sort of like low code type work can be done with Llama 3. Just a year later, Llama 4 comes out, and that's when we can actually start using Llama maybe as a GPT-4 competitor. Sort of still lagging 1 year behind the actual frontier, but it's free, right? And so you can essentially use it for a lot of the basic day-to-day tasks. But it's still quite cumbersome on a regular computer. You need a very beefy computer with a lot of RAM to be able to run it locally. And so it's not really at that sort of daily usage that we can use it. But what you can do is you can rent RAM off of a cloud provider like AWS, and you can run the model on your own cloud infrastructure rather than on your computer. But we can see how this essentially the model is getting stronger and the amount of RAM that it needs is getting lower. And so you could see in a couple of years where you could run a model like Sonnet 4 or Sonnet 5 today on your actual local machine. And that's kind of the bet that they're making long term, and that's kind of how they're gonna put the others out of their business, because you'll only need to pay for API usages for like the really smart, very frontier tech. But an AI agent that can change your calendar or write your emails for you, that can be all done locally.
I think we've touched on a couple of Llama's strengths just in the past couple of minutes, but let's go deeper into that. What does Llama actually shine at compared to the other models?
For sure. So number one is self-hosting. What does self-hosting mean? Self-hosting means that you run the operations, the servers, the data functioning, the data processing, all on your local computer. In organizations, this means in your server stacks. So like if we go into the back offices, they have those racks with servers. It runs there. And so it's very safe. It never leaves the network. Super safe, especially in high risk industries like finance or in healthcare. Very good to use there. Another one is cost predictability. So you know how much those servers cost you, whether you run 1,000 requests or 1,000,000 requests. If the server can handle it in terms of RAM, that's how much it's going to cost you. And it's just about utilizing the existing fixed cost that you have running monthly. Another one is customizing. So because it's open weight, you can change the weights to influence how the model responds to you. So if you want more of a data-backed solution, more data-backed answer, you can have the model give you that more fine-tuned and fine-grained rather than having to like give a bunch of instructions ahead of time.
And what you mentioned earlier as well is that, Meta right now is taking that bet on presuming that in the future, the vast majority of AI models are going to be self-hosted and open source. So do you think that vision is going to come to pass?
It'll probably be a mix, right? So there's going to be a lot of use cases where you run the models locally. I mean, Apple is making the same bet. If you look at it, Apple has not released any models, but its bet is that it can provide the hardware where the models can run. And so perhaps, yes, but I do think that it's going to be quite cumbersome for people to set up and run and maintain. And so there could be cases where you decide to go with a cloud provider for those very reasons. But there's definitely a market for it. It's just a question of how much the market is going to lean towards open source and how much of the market is going to lean towards closed source. The Chinese models, for example, are actually open-weighted as well. And so there is a lot of competition. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes, which obviously in future videos, we'll also be covering some Chinese models and going deep into that. For the meantime, guys, you can subscribe to our newsletter. Links down in the description below. You can also find us on LinkedIn. We're very active on a day-to-day basis. Until next time, we'll see you in the next video.